by up to 90% and decreasing fuel consumption and CO2 emissions by 40%. But demand for transport is increasing, driven by population growth, urbanization, and increasing e-commerce. So we must meet this demand with transport and infrastructure solutions that are more sustainable. And we are confident that our trucks, services, and operations will lead the way there. For us, environmental care is about so much more than just clean air. It's about using resources responsibly and about strategies for environmentally sound and cost-efficient infrastructure, ultimately allowing us to provide clean, silent, and efficient transport solutions that offer entirely new possibilities for modern societal development. But as well as talking, we have also been delivering tangible improvements to our operations and supply chains, as well as to the products and services we produce. So, you could ask, how are we leading the change? It's clear from COP26 that we need to go further and faster to deliver change. And remember, this is the decade of action. So what is Volvo Group doing? In 2021, we committed to ambitious science-based targets that will see us reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions already by 2040, 10 years earlier than the SBTi commitment of 2050. The pace of change is important, and we have set ambitious milestones along the way to help us meet our commitments. Most logistic companies see electrification as the route toward decarbonization of the industry. Most organizations have put their foot firmly in one camp, be it battery electric or fuel cell electric. And the two are too often actually portrayed as competitors. At Volvo Group, we see things a little differently. We believe the right way is a three-pronged approach to zero greenhouse gas emissions. Battery electric combined with fuel cell electric running on green hydrogen, and to a limited extent, internal combustion engine running on biofuels. Battery electric trucks are the ideal solution for shorter medium-range applications, such as local distribution, refuse collection, regional haulage, where the vehicle often returns to a fixed depot for recharging. And we have already battery-powered trucks operating in urban areas around the globe. But for heavy-duty and long-haul transport, batteries will be challenging due to limited driving range and battery weight limiting the payload. In addition, if the truck doesn't return to a depot at the end of the day, charging can become a challenge. This is where hydrogen fuel cells come in. Fuel cell trucks make their own electricity on board from stored hydrogen and have longer driving ranges, shorter refueling times, and less payload penalty. But of course, our biggest challenge is emissions from our products, which is why we focus on electromobility. It's also here we can really make an impact and help other businesses that utilize transport in their value chains. But we also need to look at the impact of our manufacturing and how we improve our value chain, the circular economy. This is already part of the initial product development and design process. In our newest business area within Volvo Group, Volvo Energy, we, together with partners, are exploring and developing new charging solutions for batteries during their first life. And we are looking also at how we can give used batteries a second life in different applications, often outside the transport industry, such as for storing solar power in apartment complexes. We're developing the vehicles, the trucks, the buses, and construction machines of the future. But we urgently need to have the charging infrastructure. We need to have the grid with the right capacity and the generation of green energy to make the adoption of these vehicles a practical reality. The same goes for production and distribution of green hydrogen. We need to see charging stations being built much more quickly than we see today. We all heard of the chicken and egg dilemma, and it's really applicable here. It doesn't matter how many great fossil-free electric trucks we offer if the infrastructure is simply not in place to support their uptake. And this is why we are now teaming up with our toughest competitors in the truck industry, Daimler Trucks and Traton, to actually invest in the charging infrastructure industry. We intend to build 1,700 charging stations across Europe for heavy-duty vehicles. It's a good start, it's a strong signal, but it's far from sufficient. Partnership is the new leadership, and with that we mean that we need open-minded and innovative ways of cooperating to accelerate the pace of change, the likes of which we haven't seen before. The climate crisis is not a challenge we can face alone as a single company. Instead, business leaders, customers, suppliers, investors and policymakers and NGOs must work together to ensure a sustainable and equitable future for all. We are convinced that innovations will provide at least some of the answers society is looking for, and we want to be at the forefront and lead the way. That's why we are working with research institutions and universities to develop technologies that increase fuel efficiency and to develop and implement the use of alternative fuels in cooperation with the energy sector. A few examples of these new partnerships. Daimler and Volvo partnership to accelerate hydrogen fuel cell technology. Volvo Daimler Traton, the partnership building charging infrastructure. Ovako Steel, H2 Green Steel and Hitachi Power Grids together with Volvo to use surplus green hydrogen from the new green steel industry into fueling other sectors, including heavy-duty trucks. The hybrid project with SSAB, LKAB and Vattenfall creating this beautiful fossil-free mining hauler. We're also one of the founding members of the First Movers Coalition, a great initiative that was launched in Glasgow during COP26. It's about companies utilizing their individual purchasing power to commit to buy fossil-free transport, fossil-free steel, air travel, etc. This creates an impressive pull effect that is now spreading all over the globe. If your company hasn't signed up already, please visit the World Economic Forum website. You are most welcome in the club. Climate change is the challenge of our generation. For 50 years, our connection to the environment has been a core value, providing inspiration that has helped shape and guide our operations. It is our ambition to lead our industry to a net zero future. Today, tomorrow, and in the weeks, years, and decades to come, we'll do more and achieve more for the environment if we work together. But sustainability is not just about reducing our climate footprint. It's far bigger than that. It's about how we handle valuable resources and how we treat one another as people. And most important of all, it is about taking action now. That makes a real difference for our customers, our partners, suppliers, our employees, and society at large as we work together to shape the world we want to live in. Thank you.
Anders, yeah, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to hear your presentation.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Anyone who heard or read the latest assessment of the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and these are the thousands of scientists around the world picked by their governments to look at all the peer-reviewed research on climate change. Anybody who read or heard this will know that it's not just time for urgent action, it's long overdue. But there still is time to act if the politics can respond to the science in time. Here, we're going to have 4 members of the Earth for All team that have produced this very special report 50 years on by the Club of Rome for this Stockholm Plus 50 conference. They're going to give us a deeper dive into their landmark report, and we have the honor to preview it. Sandrine Dixon de Clerve is the co-president of the Club of Rome and one of the project leaders of the Earth for All initiative. Sandrine, it's a delight to see you again. So tell us, why Earth for All, why now, and what do you want to achieve?
Hi, Nick. It's great to see you too. And thanks again for this very important initiative. We don't have time, I think pretty much summarizes what we think about. At the Club of Rome and Earth for All, as you know, we're marking the 50th anniversary of the Club of Rome's seminal publication, The Limits to Growth. And it's really time to say enough is enough to all leaders, to stand up to the plate and put in place economic and financial systems that service people, planet, and prosperity together. So how do we do that? Knowing that we only have 8 years left in this decisive decade. COVID, conflict, and climate change is shaking our economies, our well-being, but it's also woken us up, and so many people across the globe, to transformation and the fact that we can transform for good or for bad. So what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing, first of all, that 74% of people in G20 countries want transformation, and they want well-being economies. And together, this international initiative, the Earth for All initiative, has worked by bringing together economists from across the globe, by bringing together modelers that are looking at system dynamic modeling in order to show the pathways that are necessary for long-term prosperity for all on a relatively stable planet. And it's possible. It's possible to transform our economies, to shift from GDP growth that leaves the majority behind to well-being economies that service people, planet, and prosperity. But we need nothing less than 5 turnarounds on ending poverty, on addressing gross inequality, reaching gender equity, transitioning to clean energy, and making our food system healthy for people and for the planet. If we act now with the largest effort and investment in the decade between 2020 to 2030, so as I said, we only have 8 more years, then within a single generation, we can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and work beyond them and remain within the planetary boundaries. This will require reshaping markets. And we show clearly in our data, in our analysis, in these pathways, that we can do that step by step. We show that we can also rethink our economies, bring in circular and regenerative economies, look at the well-being economy indicators and go beyond GDP. And that we also very much need to think about that systemic transformation at scale and how we can optimize our policies so that we're not just focusing on climate, but we're looking at climate from an equity, an equality, a poverty lens. This systemic transformation at scale and at speed will require collective action by the world's governments, by citizens, by leaders in businesses, investors, all of the above. But we also know that the investments required to deliver these solutions amount to approximately 2 to 4% of national income. And that's not a huge amount. We can do this, and it can be covered by the world's richest 10% who control 50% of global income. So in summary, the window remains open to create a much better future for the majority of people on a livable planet. We have to stop crowdfunding catastrophe. We have to adopt an emergency plan of action. I was just on the Stockholm Plus 50 leadership dialogues, and I called out to leaders once again. We need action. We need timetables. We need commitments that are going to give us clear goals to achieve these turnarounds. Earth for All shows what's possible. Together, we can make it possible. We will offer the policy recommendations necessary and work with governments and citizens to make sure that this becomes a movement so that the next Earth Day, and I promise you this, and every Earth Day henceforth, we can show that we're not only the most intelligent species, as Jane Goodall likes to remind us, but also the wisest, because Jane Goodall warns us that we are not so wise when we look at the existential risk that we have created for ourselves by continuing to live beyond the planetary boundaries. So this is good news, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the other panelists who are working with me on this incredible project. And the call out to all of you listening today is go to the Earth for All website and follow us and join the movement.
Great. Thanks, Sandrine. And great. I hope the governments are going to pick up this document at Stockholm Plus 50 and do what they need to do. So let's move on.
Thank you.
David Kolster is a postdoctoral researcher at the